What's up everyone, my name is Jordan and I'm a second year medical student in New Jersey. It is the 5th week of our last block of medical school and I have a pretty exciting week ahead. So it is Tuesday and I just got home from school. Yesterday we had a lecture on different CNS infections, so we learned a lot about meningitis and encephalitis. That was an interesting session because I had always heard about these diseases but didn't really know a lot about them. We also had a lecture on headaches, which was great. We learned about the different types of headaches like tension, cluster, migraines. That was also interesting for me because I've had my fair share of migraines over the years, and I know a lot of family and friends who also suffer from them. It was nice to learn about what is going on in a migraine and what we can do to treat them and prevent them. Today was a clinical skills day where we covered a lot of information. First, we had a small group session on headaches, which reinforced a lot of the information from yesterday. Then we had a small group on different mood and memory disorders. This was more of an introduction since we haven't had lectures in these topics yet, but it was a good framing for what's to come. After all those small group sessions, we had a standardized patient encounter. We knew that the patient was coming into the ER for a headache, but that's about it. It was our job to go in and see what was going on. The first thing that I noticed was the patient was in some very clear distress. They had their eyes closed, hand was on their forehead, they were laying down. The headache was very severe. It woke them up from sleep at 2 a.m. It wouldn't go away, so that's why they came in. They had a stiff neck, felt feverish, had nausea and vomiting. I also found out that they had had a cold for a few weeks. I did parts of the neuro exam, which were pretty much normal. All their cranial nerves were intact, sensation and motor strength were normal. But then I did a few special maneuvers which came back positive. So based on their headache, those special signs, their fever, the history of a cold, I diagnosed them with meningitis. It was a pretty straightforward encounter, but it was good because this is only the second or third time that we've had a patient that is in like some very severe pain. The actors are very good and pretty convincing that they're not doing well. So I think it's good practice for us to learn how to interact with patients who are in severe pain. Personally, I feel a little bit uncomfortable interacting with a patient who's in some severe distress. I don't want to bother them. I know that some of the physical exam things that I have to do are going to hurt them, but they are necessary. So that is something that I'm going to have to practice and become more comfortable with because it's definitely going to happen when we get in the hospital. So it is now Thursday, and yesterday we had a very fun day. We had some good lectures about epilepsy, which was really nice because I'm actually working on some projects about epilepsy right now. We're looking at the outcomes of different shoulder surgeries in patients who have epilepsy. Then after class, we had our annual fall fair. We share a building with a bunch of different health profession students like PAs, PTs, OTs, athletic trainers. And last year we had a fall fair, so I'm glad that they did it again this year. They had apple cider donuts, hot chocolate, little pies, and there was even a petting zoo. I remember this time last year, and this event was a very good pick-me-up because we were in the middle of our anatomy block. Our anatomy block is probably the toughest block in our curriculum, so I know the M1s who are going through it now really appreciated the free food and stress-free environment. Then after the fair, we had a class meeting about clerkships. We are about halfway through our last block of our preclinical curriculum, which means clerkships are right around the corner. After we finish this block, we have something called transitional clerkship. The best way to describe it is like a clerkship boot camp. It's about a month long and it's to get us caught up to speed on all the stuff that we need to know before we start our first real clerkship. We have a lot of orientation type stuff, which is boring but necessary, but we do have some really important and exciting sessions too. One of the biggest things we do, we actually go to the hospital and round for a few mornings. I think this is going to be super helpful for us because rounding is one of the biggest parts of rotations, especially for internal medicine and surgery, which are my first 2 rotations. So having that experience beforehand will make the transition easier and make it so we can perform well quicker. We also have a lot of high yield refresher lectures like ones on medical imaging and common lab abnormalities. We have simulations and workshops where we learn skills like placing an IV, intubating, suturing. A lot of the upperclassmen have said that transitional is really nice because you're finally doing a lot of hands-on stuff and getting ready to start clerkships. I'm really glad that my school does it this way. I know some schools have like a 1 or 2 day orientation before they start clerkships. Doing it this way takes a lot of the anxiety and stress off of starting clerkships. Since we have 4 weeks to practice our skills without having to worry about studying for preclinical classes. So that was all yesterday. Today wasn't as exciting. We had lectures on anxiety, depression, and personality disorders. The personality disorders session was a bit of a throwback to the MCAT because I remember we had to learn a lot of those for the psych-soc section. So all in all, those lectures weren't too bad. So on to the biggest thing happening this week. I am hopping on a plane tomorrow to Orlando, Florida. I'm going down with about 10 of my friends from college, and we're gonna go to Disney and Universal. Saturday, we're gonna go to Epcot for the Food and Wine Festival, and Sunday, we're gonna go to Universal for their Halloween Horror Night. Both of these events are something that I've wanted to do for years, so I'm really excited to be able to do it. Alright, we are back in New Jersey, and I cannot wait to tell you about the weekend. So Friday, I flew out of JFK in New York to Orlando. One of my friends got in around the same time, so we Ubered together to the Airbnb. The place we stayed in was so nice. It had a bunch of bedrooms, a pool, but thankfully it wasn't too expensive since we had 10 people staying there. Friday night, we went to Disney Springs, which is sort of like an outdoor mall. They had a bunch of different restaurants and shops. So first we grabbed dinner at an Indiana Jones themed bar. A bunch of the food and drinks had different references to all the movies. After that, we walked around a little and then went to the Lego store. I cannot believe how expensive some of those things are. I think there was some Star Wars ship that was like over $1,000. Then after that, we went and grabbed a drink at the Rainforest Cafe. We were kind of just killing time for the rest of the house to get in. And then finally, once a few more people landed, we went back to the house and just relaxed because we knew tomorrow was going to be a very big day. Saturday, we woke up kind of early because we had to get into a virtual queue for one of the rides at Epcot. It's the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, and it's so popular that they do sort of a virtual queue through the app. So right at 7 a.m., you're able to log on and put yourself into the queue, but you have to do it right away because if you're like a few minutes late, then you're not going to get a spot. Thankfully, we did get a spot around 11. So I did a little bit of studying before we went to the park. That ride was by far the best roller coaster that I had ever been on up to that point. It wasn't just a roller coaster, it was an experience is the best way to put it. There were crazy visual effects and your cart rotated, so it really immersed you. And I understand why it's one of the most popular rides at Disney right now. After the ride, we wanted to get something to eat. We went to Epcot to do the classic, like eating, drinking around the world. And we started in Norway because it was open an hour before all of the other ones, and because it had some really good things for breakfast. I got something called a school bun, which was basically like a big donut that was filled with cream and dipped in coconut. After eating, we did the Frozen ride. Admittedly was very fun, but I don't know if it was worth the wait. We had to wait in like an hour-long line. Then after Norway, the next two countries were China and Italy. In China, we found this little stand that was selling different kind of snack foods like chips and stuff from China. I mean, there wasn't any English even on the bag. They were all kind of unique flavors. One of the flavors was beer, so we decided to get one bag and like split it between all of us, and it was crazy how accurate it was. We got pizza in Italy, which was honestly pretty disappointing. It was just like a quick food booth. It wasn't like a sit down thing, so I know it wasn't going to be amazing, but I definitely expected better from Italy. At Epcot, there are 11 full-time country pavilions, which are almost like little towns that are themed after a certain country. We planned on going to all 11, but since we were also there for the Food and Wine Festival, there were extra countries represented. There was small booths set up in between the big pavilions. Some of those countries were India, Greece, Kenya, Ireland, and they all had their own unique food and drinks. We stopped at a few of those, but not too many because 11 countries was already a lot to do. So after Italy, we went to Germany and then the US. The US probably had my favorite drink of the day. It was 90 degrees that day, and it's just not something that I'm used to in October when I live in New Jersey. So that drink was super refreshing and kept everyone going. Our next three stops were Japan, Morocco, and the UK. I got fish and chips at the UK, and honestly, it was the best thing that I had all day. And the UK was nice because it had a band playing live music, so we stayed there for a while and just hung out. And then our last two countries were Canada and Mexico. The park closed around 9, and they always do like a fireworks show after, so we stayed for that. But then we wanted to go home pretty fast because Sunday was going to be our longest day. I got up around 7 again to try to get some work done before we went to Universal. We got there around 10 and headed straight for the rides. My friend who sort of organized the whole thing and who's been there before said that we should try to get the Hulk coaster before anyone had eaten anything, just because of how intense it was. And honestly, I kind of agreed with him. We had to put all of our items into lockers beforehand, which I've never experienced before on a roller coaster. Maybe it's common, but I really haven't done a lot of crazy roller coasters. The coaster was awesome. I mean, I think my friend said it did like 8 loops. It was a little bit disorienting. Once we got off the ride, I felt like I was walking in slow motion. And it's funny because we're in our neuro unit right now, so we learned about the vestibular system and vertigo and stuff. I have a feeling the ride kind of shook up that system a bit, and it took a while to get back to normal. After that, we did the Spider-Man ride, which was a little bit more relaxed. It was a 3D coaster, which I've never experienced before. You literally had to put on 3D glasses. After that, we grabbed some food in the Dr. Seuss area. That was fun to walk through, but definitely seemed like it was more geared towards kids. Our next stop was in the Jurassic World area for the Velocicoaster. The Velocicoaster is the most intense and fast ride at Universal, so I was pretty excited. As you're walking up, you see the coaster doing a corkscrew right above you, so it's a good preparation for what you're about to go through. We waited in line for over an hour, but it was definitely worth it. The ride only had a lap bar, not like that whole kind of vest thing, so you feel a lot less secure, which is crazy because of how fast the coaster is. There were several times where you felt yourself come up out of the seat because you only had a lap bar, which is a crazy sensation, especially when you're doing a corkscrew over the water. After we were done there, we made our way to the Harry Potter area. This was my most anticipated part of Universal because I really like Harry Potter, and I think it's so cool that they have an area for that. First thing we did was get some butterbeer, of course, which I would describe as a mix between root beer and cream soda, so how could that be bad? Then we got in line for the Hagrid ride, which was another very long wait, but worth it. That ride wasn't as intense as the Velocicoaster, but I think it was a cooler experience overall. You're going through the woods, which is a very unique thing for a roller coaster. There's part where you're going up and the tracks are destroyed, so then you come back and then you're going backwards for a while, and then you go into a cave, and you think you're gonna shoot out of the cave, but instead the floor sort of drops out from under you and puts you on a new track, and then you go straight. I honestly don't know if I liked the Hagrid, Velocicoaster, or Guardian rides the best. All of them are great for different reasons, and I definitely want to ride them again sometime. After the Harry Potter area, we grabbed some food at a sports bar, which was very needed. The only thing anyone had to eat that day was some tater tots at the Dr. Seuss land at like 11 a.m. After dinner, it was time for the biggest reason we went on this trip in the first place: Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. If you don't know, every year Universal turns one of their parks into a giant haunted playground. This year they had 10 different haunted houses with various themes. This year, some of the houses were based on The Last of Us and Stranger Things, which are two of my favorite shows. Those houses were one of the main reasons we decided to do the trip. So the haunted houses are sort of scattered around the park, but there's also just scare actors walking through the park trying to scare you, so it's kind of hard to escape the horror. When we got there, it was still light out, so it wasn't super scary, but after the first house, it was dark, so it got a little bit more intense then. Right away, we went to get in line for The Last of Us. The one downside to the whole night was how long the lines were, which we knew going in. We knew some of them were gonna be long the whole night, but honestly, all of them were like over an hour for most of the night. If I were going to do this again, I would probably just bite the bullet and get the express pass just to make sure that I could finish all of the houses. We were only able to do 6 out of the 10 houses, and we were standing in line for pretty much the whole night. I would say I have been to scarier haunted houses before. Even just a few weeks ago, I did a haunted hayride in New Jersey, and I do think that that was a little scarier. It took you through the woods and corn mazes with absolutely no lights, and there was a lot less people there, so you felt more alone. However, the set designs and costumes at Universal were insane. You can tell they put a lot of effort into designing the houses and doing the makeup for the scarers. Even though the lines were super long, I do think it was worth the wait. It was so cool to go through The Last of Us and the Stranger Things houses because it really felt like you were in that world. We ended up staying until 1:30 in the morning, so all in all, we were at Universal for like 16 hours. Our feet hurt so bad and we were just ready to go to bed. I flew back this morning around 11. I've just been trying to catch up on schoolwork. I was thankfully able to keep up with Anki because of the long wait times. I just downloaded all my Anki cards onto my phone and I was able to get through all of them while waiting in line. All in all, I had a great time. Like I said earlier, both Epcot and Universal are things that I've wanted to do for a long time, so I'm glad I was able to do them before we start clerkships. I know my schedule is gonna get a lot more hectic in a few weeks, so I'm trying to enjoy the small free time I have before that happens. Alright, well that is gonna do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like below and subscribe if you want to see videos like this in the future. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.